So I'm going to start with Joe Fender, since Joe's next to me here.
And Linda's not here.
And Linda's not here, yes. So I got to give you a little story here and start on this. When I was dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife, by the way, we were high school sweethearts. In fact, we met when she was in junior high. After our first date, her father took me into the garage, points to the power tools on the wall and says, "These could really harm a man." That's all he said to me for the next 7 years I was dating her. Now, he loved thrillers. One day I was at their house and I was reading Extraordinary Powers by Joe.
So you're the one.
I was the one, yes. And he kept looking over and, he'd say, he'd just kind of look. And I said, "Oh, this is a fantastic book. Would you like to read it?" That was his answer. So after I finished it, I gave it to him. I said, "This is a fantastic book. You're really going to like it." So then later, he gave it back to me. And I said, "What'd you think?" My girlfriend said later, "Oh, he loved that. He was all night reading it." So thank you, even though he didn't tell me he enjoyed it. I certainly did as well.
Sounds like my editor.
I won't tell him. I won't tell him. So, Joe, I want to start with a question for you. And that question is, you've been writing other books since then, obviously. Why did you start doing corporate thrillers?
Well, yes.
Hello. We got a mic.
All right, okay. I don't write corporate thrillers, first of all. I hate that. I write thrillers. But the Paranoia was my first New York Times bestseller, and I think it probably was because it was so different from anything that I'd read or anything else that was out there. And that was purely an accident. I wanted to do something that felt fresh and different, and I paid a visit to a friend of mine at Apple Computer, and I walked around and I said, "Wow, this is actually very cool." I mean, I sort of thought of corporations the way most writers do, is like, just boring, dull monoliths. And I walked around and I said, "This is actually a community, and this is a really interesting place, and some scary stuff could happen." And a friend of mine from the CIA said that there's more espionage that goes on between companies than it used to go on, actually, in dollar figures, between the Soviet Union and the United States. And I thought, well, what if I did a kind of a John le Carré, a spy who came in from the cold, only have it between two companies, and have one guy be the mole. And so I wrote this book that broke every rule that I'd been told by my agent before, and it actually worked. So I kind of stumbled into it, and all of a sudden everyone wanted me to do more of them.
I had written chick lit, for better or for worse, that's what they call it. Then I'd gotten into mysteries, and I started coming to Thrillerfest, and I thought, God, and I'm reading everybody's books, and I'm thinking, man, these are so much more fun. Because they're so, the short chapters. I used to mock James Patterson for the short chapters. I think, really, 100-page chapter, 128. But there is something to be said for, like, closure in a book where you can flip a few pages, and you're like, oh, good, I can put this down if I want. But most of the time, you can't put it down. So I just decided to, I wrote a book called The Good Liar, and I had I think as a writer, my writer's teachers always told me, don't rely on what you know. That rule, write what you know, they said, no, that's not true fiction. I took a lot of classes from this guy at Northwestern, and he was very big on don't be a lazy writer, do your research, write people who aren't necessarily you. So in The Good Liar, I had a 56-year-old guy who was a Vietnam vet. I never thought I would write a Vietnam flashback in my life. And it was great, and it was well received, but I think I kind of got lazy and tired. And so when when Mira asked, they said, we'd love you to do a series, and it would be a thriller, we want a returning character, what do you think? I just said, how about a lawyer from, and I'm a lawyer, a lawyer from Chicago who has red hair, and she's kind of sassy, and I don't know. And basically, it's a little bit like an avatar of me, like what I wish I was. But I have her sort of running around Chicago getting in all sorts of trouble. And we put out 3 in a row last summer, June, July, and August. And we're doing 4 more now.
It was a down and dirty Vietnam War story. And it was just sheer darn luck that it came out when it did in 1986, 11 years after the fall of Saigon, 3 months after the movie Top Gun came out, and alerted the American public to the fact that, hey, these jets are pretty cool. And Navy jets are even cooler. You put Tom Cruise in it, it's, just all right. And, but anyway, that started my career. It spent 28 weeks on the bestseller list, made a movie out of it. And anyway, my social life didn't improve much. I had a reporter come from the Denver Post to interview me, and the way the story read afterward, he walked in expecting to interview Tom Cruise and found out he was talking to Ward Cleveland.
Payne and Jones are 2 ex-military guys. I wasn't in the military, but I think, just as Laura had mentioned, a lot of times the characters that we write are almost avatars of what we hope we could be. And the main character that most people call in my book would be Jonathan Payne, who's roughly my height, but has roughly 40 more pounds of muscle. Has a quick wit and intelligent, but he is, also multi-millionaire, from family money and all the things that a lot of us wish that we had. And so, in a lot of ways, I think that I would like to be him. But for the most part, the interaction between Payne and Jones is pretty much the interaction that I would have with my friends on a daily basis. My characters are the prototypical American wisecracking heroes. And all the people that I've met in the military, I live down in Tampa near MacDill Air Force Base, and all of the guys that do the special forces, they've got this very dark and very black sense of humor, because it's the only way that they can really get through all the gruesome stuff that they do. And I find that their sense of humor is very similar to my own. So there's a little bit of me in both of the characters. The dialogue that comes out of their mouths would be the dialogue that came out of mine.
Why write about my day job? With all respect, I don't. My day job is, I wrote full-time for about 7 years, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the isolation. I need to keep on sort of type A, and you can only paint the house so many times, right? So, so I cut my teeth. I was a safety engineer. I am a safety engineer, and in the explosives manufacturing business back in the day. And I was also a firefighter, so I could blow shit up and then put it out, which it's kind of internal. But to the degree that stuff, my career, such as it is, 15 years in the fire service, command officer, all that kind of stuff. I don't write about the fire service. I tried to write about the fire service, and I couldn't do it. Because the reality is, your average firehouse, and I mean this with the greatest respect. I did it for a long time, and I love these guys, and it's a tremendous profession. But if you think that firefighters are sitting around a firehouse hoping that nothing burns tonight, you're wrong. All right? It's like, I don't wish harm on anybody, but if it has to come, it might as well be on my shift. Right? So you can go out, and it gets into what Chris was talking about, the black humor and that sort of thing. There's a mindset of people who walk into other people's lives at the worst possible moment. And, as a buddy of mine said, when huge fire one time, the whole world was on fire, and he said, "Oh shit, we are 911. There's nobody else to call. So you're either going to have it under control or you're not." I couldn't bring that, I was too close to it to bring that to life, to convince the reader that the character can pull off the tech stuff, which means I just never tell the tech stuff from that character's point of view. I tell it from the point of view of another character who's receiving the technical information. So this saves hours and hours and hours of research they don't particularly want to do. And so I think the whole business of write what you know, it's write what you can imagine convincingly.